On 20 August 1989, at about 1:46 a.m., in the heart of London on the River Thames, the pleasure boat Marchioness was rammed twice by the massive sand dredger Bobel. Within 30 seconds, the smaller vessel was pushed underwater, stern first, and disappeared beneath the dark water between Cannon Street Bridge and Southwark Bridge. Of the 131 people on board, mostly young friends celebrating a 26th birthday party, 51 never made it back to the surface. This was no natural disaster. It was a preventable collision caused by poor lookout on both vessels, lax safety rules, and a busy river that had grown dangerously complacent. The Marchioness was a classic 85-foot pleasure steamer, once a familiar sight on the Thames for parties and sightseeing trips. That warm summer night, she was packed with 131 passengers, almost all in their 20s, dancing and laughing as they cruised downriver. The occasion was the 26th birthday of Antonio de Vasconcellos, a popular young banker. Friends had gathered from across London for a night of music, drinks, and celebration under the stars. The boat departed from Temple Pier around 7:30 p.m. for a 4-hour cruise. On the upper deck, guests enjoyed the breeze and the glittering lights of the city. Below, the lower saloon was alive with laughter and conversation. Captain Douglas Faldo, an experienced skipper who knew the river well, was at the helm. The atmosphere was joyful and carefree, exactly the kind of summer night Londoners cherished. Everything felt perfectly normal, until the moment the much larger Bobel appeared out of the darkness behind them. The River Thames in central London had always been busy, but by 1989, safety standards had become dangerously relaxed. Pleasure boats and heavy commercial traffic, including large dredgers like the Bobel, shared the same narrow channel with few strict rules about lookouts or radio communication. Neither vessel was required to carry modern radar or automatic identification systems. Lookouts were often left to a single person without proper equipment or training. The Port of London Authority and the Department of Transport had been warned for years that the mix of party boats and heavy industry created unnecessary risk. Yet little had been done to tighten regulations. Commercial vessels operated on tight schedules, while party boats focused on entertainment. On busy nights, captains relied on visual sightings and basic radio chatter, assuming everyone would stay alert. It was a disaster waiting to happen, and on that August night, the warning signs were simply ignored. The Bobel, a 1,000-ton aggregates dredger, was heading upriver after unloading its cargo. Her captain, John Henderson, had only one lookout posted on the bow, and that man had no radio to warn the bridge quickly. On the Marchioness, Captain Faldo had not set up a dedicated aft lookout, relying instead on occasional glances behind him. Both crews had grown used to the crowded river and assumed they would always see each other in time. In the final minutes before impact, the Marchioness passed under Southwark Bridge. The Bobel was closing fast from behind, but no alarm was raised and no evasive action was taken. Years of relaxed oversight on the Thames had created a false sense of security, one that would prove fatal that night. At approximately 1:46 a.m., just after the Marchioness passed under Southwark Bridge, the Bobel struck her from behind. The first impact hit 20 feet from the stern and spun the smaller boat sideways. Seconds later, the dredger struck again, 33 feet from the stern, ripping off the upper superstructure and tilting the Marchioness violently onto her side. The lower saloon flooded instantly. The lights went out. Passengers and crew were thrown into the cold water or trapped below decks as the boat was pushed under. Within 30 seconds, the Marchioness had vanished beneath the surface. Survivors described the chaos. People screaming, struggling to reach the few lifebuoys, climbing onto the upturned hull and watching friends disappear in the darkness. Some were pulled under by the sinking boat. Others swam desperately toward the riverbanks or nearby vessels. The first rescuers, nearby boat crews, police and firefighters, arrived within minutes. Ordinary Londoners on the bridges and embankments also rushed to help, throwing lifebelts and jumping into the cold, fast-flowing Thames to pull people to safety. Firefighters and police divers battled strong tidal currents and near-zero visibility in the murky water, searching for those still trapped inside the submerged wreck. Some survivors were found clinging to buoys or debris, shivering and in shock. Others were pulled from the water suffering from hypothermia after minutes in the chilly river. The rescue effort continued through the night and into the following days. Divers faced dangerous conditions as they entered the overturned hull, recovering bodies from the lower decks where many had been trapped when the boats sank. The strong tide repeatedly shifted debris, complicating searches. By dawn, the full scale of the tragedy became clear as families began arriving at the riverbanks, desperately seeking news of loved ones. The psychological impact on rescuers was profound. Many later spoke of the haunting scenes of young people in party clothes floating in the dark water. The official inquiry led by Lord Justice Clerk in 2001 left no doubt. The basic cause was poor lookout on both vessels. Neither crew had seen the other in time to avoid the collision. The report also criticized the owners of both boats, the Department of Transport, and the Port of London Authority for years of inadequate safety oversight. No one was ever successfully prosecuted, but the tragedy finally forced real change. New regulations were introduced, stricter lookout requirements, mandatory radio communication between vessels, improved lighting and visibility standards, and better coordination between commercial and passenger traffic. Lifeboat stations were established along the central Thames, and modern safety equipment became standard. The Marchioness disaster became the catalyst that transformed safety on one of the world's busiest urban rivers. The 51 young lives lost that night left behind families forever changed. Parents who would never see their children grow older, siblings who lost their closest friends, and friends whose laughter turned to lifelong grief. Many victims were in their 20s, full of dreams and just starting their adult lives, taken in a matter of seconds by a collision that should never have happened. For years afterward, families gathered at memorials, shared stories of the vibrant young people they lost, and fought for answers and accountability. The Marchioness disaster showed us that even on a river flowing through one of the world's great cities, complacency can be deadly. The moment we allow busy waterways to operate without proper safeguards and constant vigilance, we are already playing a dangerous game with hundreds of lives. The only real protection is to respect the warnings, enforce the rules, and never again assume that it will always be fine on the Thames or any river.